The McKinsey annual report of women in the workplace is now out, and I'm so excited to be sharing with you three amazing takeaways that I had from reading this report. It is time. It is time for us to expand the conversation about women in the workplace beyond one demographic. And so if you don't know me, real quick, I'm Kisha, career success strategist, equipping and empowering women to own their inherent brilliance, break through self-doubt and fear so that they can advance in their career. Because as we know, and as this report shows us, there are enough external barriers that are limiting and hindering us from advancing in our careers and really fulfilling our potential, that we do not want to actually allow self-doubt and fear and other internal barriers to stop us, to additionally stop us from advancing. So if you want to learn more about how to empower yourself and to show up powerfully in the workplace unapologetically, I invite you to follow me on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you're seeing this video. So my three takeaways from the McKinsey study, frankly, none of it is absolutely surprising, but in the context of 2020, when we're dealing with a racial crisis as well as a pandemic, COVID-19, it is very interesting to hear about the unique challenges that women are facing in advancing in their careers, specifically in this situation. So my takeaway number one is that feminism, that is, or women empowerment, if feminism doesn't resonate with some people, but women empowerment that is not inclusive of women of all backgrounds is outdated and frankly will no longer be tolerated, and people won't participate in that kind of women empowerment because we are a diverse country and corporations that want to remain competitive and really leverage the talent in their organization to win in the marketplace need to actually encourage women of different backgrounds to show up and show their full self at work and leverage their full self at work in order to help the corporation to win. So it is no longer only about white women advancing in the workplace. Specifically, the conversation right now is around Black women in particular. And what are the unique challenges that Black women are facing that stop them from advancing in their career? Some of them is not having enough exposure, not having the sponsorship or the advocates that will help them get the recognition and the reward that they deserve. In addition to women of color, in addition to Black women in particular, the article points out that LGBTQ women also face specific challenges, as well as women with disabilities. What are we doing for those demographics to open up the door, to remove that glass ceiling, to break through that glass ceiling so that they can advance in their career? But there are other demographics that the report didn't speak about that, frankly, I think are very important. We are a country with a very high percentage of immigrants. So what about the experiences of women that are immigrants? What specific challenges are those women having that they're bringing to the table and that is not being addressed? What are the challenges that women that have to operate in business where English is not their first language? What can we do to build a culture that is more inclusive of those women and women that are of different religions, Muslim women, women that are not Christians? What are the specific challenges that those women are facing? So I'm really excited that we're expanding the conversation because frankly, it's super outdated to be talking about one demographic of women. All women of all backgrounds, of all nations need to be empowered and advance in their career so that the corporations can leverage a global marketplace and be able to market to that global marketplace. So the second takeaway that I took away from is this concept of emotional intelligence. And I'm going to put it under the bucket of empathy. And as the racial violence increases in this country, or actually doesn't increase, but there is more visibility to it, as well as the threat of burnout because women are at home, not just working, but also having to homeschool and take care of their children. This conversation around emotional intelligence and specifically empathy is important to be able to open the door to have challenging conversations, to be able to hear what each other is saying, whether or not we're experiencing mental and physical and emotional exhaustion because we're spending so much time working, as well as the expectation of high performance has not been diminished, even though women, unfortunately, are still burdening the majority of the home care or the child care responsibilities, and putting on top of that their unique challenges of leading teams and being leaders in their organization. So empathetic listening is important, and I think this is an advantage that women can, in particular, can leverage, because if you know what it is like to be the only one as a woman with that seat at the table, the only one in the room, you know what it's like to have the burden of being the only one. It actually gives you a platform. Maybe you cannot identify specifically with a woman of color. Maybe you cannot identify specifically with a LGBTQ or you know, a woman immigrant, but you do know what it's like to be othered. You do know what it's like to be the only person at the table that looks like you. And so that's a basis from which, being social creatures or social beings that we are as women, that's an advantage that we have that we can leverage, because we know what it is like. It allows us to be more empathetic, and at least to begin the conversation of wondering and being curious of what it is like to be in that other person's shoe. So I don't necessarily think all these things are bad. I think if you have challenges in life, it allows you to be more empathetic. It allows you to be able to understand where this other person is coming from. And the study is interesting, and I'm not surprised by it. It does say that women in particular tend to champion women that are diverse much more than men. And it is because, back to that point, because they know what it is like. We know what it is like to be othered. And so stepping up and really stepping into that power of being that ally is extremely, extremely important. I think as relational beings as women, we have an opportunity to use that relational skill to get the most out of each other in the workplace. And the last point is a leadership standpoint. When we talk about leadership, we're always talking about what can we do to make this, to motivate other people. But one of the most important things about leadership is being inclusive. And I hear this question all the time: how can I build a workplace that is more inclusive of people of all backgrounds, of all genders, of all nationalities, of all races, ethnicities, etc.? And frankly, the same thing that it takes to build an inclusive culture is frankly the same thing that it takes to be a great leader. It is not a mystery. It's a leader, as we talked about, that can be empathetic, a leader that can have high emotional intelligence, a leader that's willing to have the tough conversation, a leader that is willing to hold themselves accountable and their organizations accountable for goals, and not just to be accountable, but to measure the progress towards those goals. All these things are great leadership skills, and those great leadership skills are exactly what it takes to build a more inclusive culture. So I could go on and on about this. However, what I am going to do is I'm going to invite you to my masterclass on Thursday, where we're going to discuss more about what you can do to own your power and show up more powerfully at work as a woman, how to practice self-care so that you do not burn out and decide to opt out. Because guess what? As the study says, if we opt out, the room will never look different. The room will never look different if we take our names out of the hat. And so we are in this for the long run. We're not in this for the short run. I want to invite you to the amazing masterclass that I'll be holding on Thursday. And we're going to be talking about how to overcome self-doubt at work so that you can show up powerfully and unapologetically and get the rewards and the recognition that you deserve. What do you think of today's video? Leave a comment below and let me know what you think about my points, my 3 points about women in leadership, specifically in the workplace, around women empowerment or / feminism, my points around being empathetic and having high emotional intelligence, and the 3rd point around inclusiveness and how it relates to leadership. All right. Have a fantastic week. Don't forget, you were not meant to shrink down lower, so rise up and own your power.